Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Everybody, hi, back. Good to be back. Bottom line, listen, I know Saturday was all about college football, as it should be. We've obviously talked about it a ton here on the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. But there was one college basketball game that we do have to talk about from the weekend. It was Kentucky traveling to Seattle to take on Gonzaga. Obviously, dubbed neutral site game, but we know it really wasn't. Obviously, just a short ways away from Gonzaga's campus. What's interesting about this game? We all know the deal, right? It was the first real adversity that Kentucky had faced since Mark Pope accepted the head coaching job, coming off not only a loss to Clemson, but you got to fly across country. Obviously, we find out a little bit before tip-off, that Lamont Butler, who injured his ankle in that Clemson game, would not be available. I would argue Lamont Butler is probably the most important player on Kentucky's roster. Well, I bring it up because how about this? None of it really mattered, because in the end, Kentucky, which fell down 16 points at the half, trailed by as many as 18 points in the game, they come back and win in overtime. Final score 90-89. And I just don't know how many people were watching it because of all the college football craziness, but this was an awesome, unbelievable game. And what it says to me transparently, listen, we've been right on this channel about Mark Pope. Now, Kentucky fans, I'll own it. I picked Gonzaga to beat Kentucky in this game because I just thought it was a bad matchup. Lamont Butler was probably either not going to play or be 100%, but it goes back to what I've been saying all spring and summer long. Trust in Mark Pope, trust the process, trust that this roster is better than I think a lot of people realize. What have I been saying all offseason long? Hope in Pope, baby. That is right, hope in Pope. By the way, make sure to get your Hope in Pope tees at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. That's right. Hope in Pope, baby. Hope in Pope. All right, so let's dive into this game, because to me, this game was just, it was as classic as probably a little bit of an oversell. But listen, what did I just say? You come in, you don't have your starting point guard. And it's not only that you won without your starting point guard. It's not only that you won without your starting point guard 3,000 miles away from home, but you did it, as I said, in a game where nothing went right for about the first 20 to 25 minutes of this game. We all watched it. Graham Ike, the starting power forward of Gonzaga, dominated early. He finishes the game with 28 points, 11 boards overall. As I said, coming in, I was worried about the size and physicality of Gonzaga coming into this matchup. It was an issue early. Ryan Nembhard is one of the best point guards in college basketball, finishes this game with 13 points and 10 assists. And I just bring it up because early on, it felt like Gonzaga was getting whatever they wanted. It felt like the game was basically out of hand. It felt like Kentucky just had to listen. We're going to lose another one. Let's regroup. Let's get back to Lexington. Let's get ready for what's ahead, including Louisville and Ohio State. Instead, what does this team do? Battles. A couple things. First of all, Mark Pope. I mean, listen, this is why we don't even need hope with Pope, because this guy, I said it when he took the job. I said, he's a great coach. I argued about how you got there, and it was a weird process, but I said, this guy can coach. And you look at what he did in this game. The defensive switches in the second half. You go to zone, then you go back to man-to-man, and then you switch, and then you do this, and then you do that. That's coaching. That's adjustments. I respect it. You had a blueprint. You had a game plan coming into this game, and I think he might have even talked about it after the game. I haven't heard all of the post-game press conference, but you had a game plan. You thought you were going to do this. It's not working. So what does Mark Pope do? He just completely changes the game plan on the fly, and he ends up going to zone. He ends up switching up the defenses, and it all ends up working out. Beyond that, I got to give credit where it's due. We talked on Thursday. Well, really, it was after the Clemson game, so it was Wednesday, Thursday in that time frame. We talked about the reality of, I just wondered, is this Kentucky team just not as deep as we thought they were? And listen, I don't know if they played the Torres pod in the pregame locker room before the game actually happened, because the guys that I criticized were the best players on the floor on Saturday night. Kirk Kriisa, again, I was critical. I got to own it. But this is also a kid that's played 5 years of high leverage college basketball, 3 at Arizona, 1 at West Virginia. Now he's at Kentucky. This guy against Clemson, it was just bagels across the board. I think 0 points on 0 shots, 0 3-pointers made. I think he had 1 steal, no assist, whatever it was. Well, go back and look at what he did against Gonzaga, against a really good, talented backcourt. Kirk Kriisa forced into action, forced to start, 27 minutes played, finishes with 8 points, 4 assists, and here's the important part, just 1 turnover the entire game. Took care of the basketball. He wasn't great, but he was absolutely good enough. By the way, you know who else was awesome that I criticized? Brandon Garrison. I said former McDonald's All-American. Maybe he's just not as far along as I expected. Well, on Saturday, he was great in the low post against a physical and big and athletic team that we talked about in Gonzaga. Off the bench, Brandon Garrison, 10 points, 9 boards, really impactful, meaningful minutes. I love the energy when they gave he clapped in somebody's face. They gave him a ridiculous whatever. And so I just bring it up because I love the effort from him. And then the resilience of some of the other players. Jackson Robinson wasn't great against Duke a few weeks ago. By the way, follow it up, wasn't great early in this game. Well, guess what? Finishes with 18 points, second most on the Kentucky team behind only Andrew Carr, including 7 of 15 shooting from the field, 5 assists overall as well. He had to take on more of the playmaking duties. And by the way, I mentioned Jackson Robinson's second leading scorer. That's because Andrew Carr was the leading scorer. Did not play great against Clemson the other night. Part of it, Mark Pope acknowledged. I probably took him out too early and kept him on the bench too long in foul trouble. Well, guess what? He finishes with 19 points, a couple big plays late, all of that. So one, it's about the resilience. It's about the toughness. And I got to give credit where it's due because it's not that I didn't believe that this team had toughness, but to do that 3,000 miles away from home, I mean, some of the stats on this game are absolutely unbelievable. I saw this. Did you know that Gonzaga, 175-0 in their last 175 games in which they had a 10-plus point halftime lead? Yeah, that streak's over because they were up by 16 points at the half and end up losing this game again in overtime. Oh, by the way, how about the fact it's the biggest halftime comeback tied for in Kentucky history? Even that great game against LSU under Rick Pitino, I'm a little young to remember it, but they were down 31 and came back to win. They trailed by 16 at the half before falling down 31. So I just bring it up because the stats are incredible. And what this shows me is a degree of resilience with this team. Got to give them credit. The toughness that they displayed on the road, and I know it was a neutral site. No. We'll call it a neutral site. It was a road game, okay? On the road, tough environment, and to just battle, find a way. By the way, you cut the lead, then Gonzaga goes on a little run again. Then they have what was it, 3-4 point lead with like a minute and a half to go. You fight again, and then you get to overtime. You had a chance to win it in regulation. You get to overtime, and you still figure out a way to not only get the win, but you were the fresher team in overtime after coming back 2-3 times in that game. So I just cannot credit this team enough. And again, I think it's the toughness and it's the resilience. I thought they had it. They fought against Duke, but to see that in that environment was incredible. And I'll just say this, man, it just, listen, we've talked about it a lot, but it feels like just a totally new era, a totally fresh slate. And it goes back to what we've talked about all summer. Mark Pope was the guy, man. Mark Pope was the guy. The guy's basically done everything right since he got this job. We talked about it in the summer with recruiting and with the portal and everything. Then he puts together a great recruiting class in 2025 that I obviously don't think is done. But all the questions were going to be, what happens when you get to the season? How good is he going to be? Now, that was a place that I never had doubts because he's never had a team as talented as he has at Kentucky. But to see him go, again, I hate to keep saying on the road because I know it wasn't technically on the road, but to go away 3,000 miles away from home against Mark Few. By the way, a coach that is very familiar with you. Remember, BYU under Mark Pope was in the WCC with Gonzaga until just a year or two ago. So Few is familiar with you. He knows what you're about. He knows what you do. They get up big. And for them to get up big and you, again, to battle back 2-3 times, to see different players making different plays in different moments. Andrew Carr here, Jackson Robinson there, Brandon Garrison there. Oh, there's Kirk Kriisa. And I'm sure I'm missing some guys. I'm not trying to diminish anybody. It just shows you this is a new era. It's so exciting. And I just think, listen, when the previous era ended, you needed somebody fresh. Mark Pope ended up being the perfect guy. We've talked about it time and time again, whether it was Scott Drew, whether it was whoever. Doesn't matter who you thought you were getting back in April, and we did enough kind of conversations about that at the time. The reality is you got the right guy when it mattered most here in November and December. So Kentucky fans, enjoy this one. To quote the old Michael Jordan quote, remember he was at the Duke Carolina game and they said, what's the ceiling of this program? He said, the ceiling is the roof. And I think what he meant to say was there is no ceiling to this team. There is no ceiling to this program. Well, that's Kentucky right now, man. If you do that on the road with Lamont Butler, listen, I know the SEC is going to be crazy and tough. And you look at so many teams playing well right now, not just the obvious ones, the Tennessees and Auburns, but Ole Miss's top 25 team. LSU is playing pretty well. Who else? Missouri's obviously much improved. The point I'm trying to make is it's just hard to look at this team and say they don't have the capability of beating anybody left on your schedule. When you trail 18 points against Gonzaga and find a way to win, it shows a resilience that I think there's no question that you have.